So I work at a 24-hour contact centre on the shift team. Most of the call centre works 9 to 5 hours, but there is a small team of us here for the after-hour shifts. The nature of the call centre is that people call for interpreters and we set up the conference. At night, most of the calls we get are from emergency services, but it could really be about anything. We never know what's waiting on the other line, and us shifties have to deal with a lot of strange stuff. But nothing has made my skin crawl more than this one caller that started calling about a month ago. We get the occasional prank call, or even a lewd caller, so I can't really pin down the exact time this guy started calling. About a month ago, I got a call that went like this, and I kind of suspect it might have been him, but I'm not 100% sure. So let's just say that even if it wasn't the same guy, I don't want to meet this person either. Welcome to company name, this is Belle, how can I help you? Hello? Is anyone on this line? Hello? What language do you need?
Poo-poo.
Sorry? Was that Pashto?
No.
Where is the language from?
Spain.
No, I'm pretty sure they speak Spanish in Spain.
I'm gonna put my dick between your tits and come in your face.
Okay, I'm hanging up now. And that was that. The first of its kind that have haunted our shift team for the last month. Another girl on the team hung up a call quite panicked about 2 weeks ago. I heard a lot of the call just on her end, but she was calmly explaining the way our service worked to someone. She was just saying that we accept calls from non-English speakers as well as agencies, and we can put the callers through to a lot of companies as long as they accept our calls and are our clients. And then she just stopped talking and said, "Guys, this guy just got really crazy on the phone. I'm really shaken up." She didn't want to repeat what he had said, but after I told her about my call with the last dude, she said it was pretty similar to that. The next one I wasn't there for, so I don't have the best details of exactly what was said or anything, but I was given the rundown by a girl I work with. I'll try my best to explain this one, because this is where it starts getting really freaky. So this girl on my team stayed back to hang out with the relieving shift. We were on the evening shift and they were on the graveyard. She said at about 3 AM this guy started calling and asking for Vietnamese. They would get the interpreter, and then a woman would come on the line speaking Spanish, so they would disconnect the call with him. He kept calling, so they started to ignore his request for an interpreter. Then things started getting strange. He started saying some rude stuff, and then they would hear the keys of his phone being pressed. Now, I had brought this up with our team leader, and she told us to trace his calls if we could. So they kept him on the line and started to trace the calls. But then they realised he was transferring the call, or conferencing in another call or something. The phone started ringing with the sound when you make the call to someone, and then someone answered on the other line.
Hello, 911, what's your emergency?
The really strange thing about this is that we are not in the USA. We're not even close to the USA. It's kind of hard to make conference calls if you don't know how. It's also kind of hard to find an international number for 911. Normally, if you dial 911, it redirects you to the emergency services for whatever country you're in. So we have no idea how he was doing it. But this guy was kind of putting on a voice, so it's hard to tell if he's actually American. Although a detail that happens later makes me think he is American, but he never stayed on the line to finish the call trace. So the girls at work ended up saying sorry and explaining the situation to the 911 operator. They were as freaked out about it as we were. But the conference didn't collapse. If the caller who made the conference hangs up, then the conference would collapse. So this guy just stayed on the line listening to these people from 2 different countries try and work out why they were speaking to each other. Other calls that night I've been told about included one where they heard a bomb countdown timer. They weren't sure if it was live or recording, but it sounded like 10 seconds until detonation, and then started counting down. It never finished the countdown, the call just cut out before it could. He also called a police station in America and conferenced us into them, and then he just hung on the line not saying anything. I'm not sure of the particular details of that one beyond that. A few days later we started our night shift rotation, which I'm about to explain only happened 2 nights ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my brain. At about 4 AM, the girl I work with, pretty calmly I might add, yells out, "Ah, it's this dickhead again," and then puts the phone on speaker so we can all hear it. What I heard on the other line made my eyes water and my skin crawl. In the most horrible voice, deep and rusty and almost like a whisper coming out of the speaker, it was this horrible voice mixed with horrible words.
I am going to kill you.
Everyone froze. This was pretty creepy even for what we were used to. Then immediately he transferred to another line, and this time he didn't stay quiet. An American man answered the phone and let me just throw in that he had a really awesome manner and accent. Their conversation went like this.
Hello?
Hi, I'm just calling in relation to an Xbox you put up on Craigslist.
Oh yeah, it comes with 2 controllers and some games.
They had a conversation about the Xbox for a few minutes. Until this happened.
I'm going to stick my dick up your ass.
Excuse me, what did you just say?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get my dick and rub it all over your face. Do you like that?
Oh man, why would you say that? That's nasty.
And then the call cut out. I was next in line for a call, so my teammate warned me, and as soon as the last word left her lips, my phone rang. Company name, how can I help? I didn't want to use my name this time.
Oh hey, what's your name? I want you to help with something. What's your name?
My name is Mel. I use that because it's close to my own name, I guess, and people always mistake it anyway on the phone.
Can you fuck me, please? Come here and fuck me. Fuck you. I'm gonna kill you.
At this point, I put it on speaker. I was supposed to mute it, but I'm not sure if I did because I was trying to figure out how to call Trace. I said, "How do you call Trace?" and then he hung up. It's currently 2:14 AM and I'm at work. Any minute now, he could call again, and my heart jumps every time the phone rings. So anyway, creepy 4 AM caller, let's not meet. Ever. 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 One summer night, when I was about 5 years old and my sister was about 8, we awoke to hear through our open bedroom window my parents yelling loudly on the back patio. This was not a common occurrence, and when they did fight, it was not typically anywhere that there was a chance of us hearing. But this sort of thing did happen from time to time, and though the situation was mildly unusual, we shrugged it off. We shut the window and went back to sleep. We promptly forgot about the ordeal, and it wasn't until years later that we learned the truth about the yelling. As a near adult, I overheard my mother explaining the situation to a family member in another room. Apparently, at some point in the night after my sister and I went to bed, my parents received an unusual phone call from someone. That person was using an electronic interpreter, the same type of technology a person who is deaf might use to make calls and communicate over the phone. Understandably, my parents were a little surprised because they didn't know anyone who would use this service to contact us, but either way they accepted the call. I'm not sure how the person on the other line introduced themselves, or if they even did it at all, but they knew the full names of everyone in my family, which was immediately very creepy and alarming. The conversation began to escalate as the person on the other end of the phone very specifically explained what our house looked like and told my parents they were hiding somewhere in our backyard. Our backyard was large, dark, and full of all kinds of plants and trees that made it very hard to see. There were too many places to look, and at this point, the tormentor made it clear that they had intentions of entering our home and dismembering my sister and I. At this point, understandably, my parents were beginning to become frantic. There was a chance that nobody was out there and that this was all some kind of cruel joke, but that notion was not worth the risk of believing. My dad asked if they were really where they said they were, what were my parents doing at that very moment? What were they wearing? And just like that, this infection of a human on the other end of the line explained exactly what my father was doing, exactly what they were wearing, where certain things on our patio were placed, the expression on my mum's face, every detail. My dad, a rough guy with a heart of gold, charged into the night ready to kill any person he encountered. Neither of my parents had cell phones, I don't think they were even a thing at the time, so my mum took the phone, which had finally been put down by my dad, and called the cops. As brave as my dad was for venturing into the dark that night, he found nothing. When the cops showed up, they found nothing too. The police were not able to trace the call because of the electronic interpreter, which they said was a common device used by people trying to anonymously harass others over the phone. Nothing ever came of this incident, and as I said, I was not told about it until at least a decade after it happened. Was this the work of a former friend or enemy trying to play some kind of cruel joke? Was there an actual murderer in my backyard who was going to dismember my sister and I? We will never know. But to the person who was hiding in my backyard that night, let's not meet. This happened almost 10 years ago when I was 19. I don't like to tell people this story. So at the time, I was living with my parents. We weren't getting along, so I worked nights to avoid them or hung out with friends until I knew they'd be asleep. I was closing up at work pretty late on a Saturday night. While waiting for my checkout, I go to check my phone and I see I have a voicemail from an unknown number. I listen to it.
Hey, Rachel. I'm upstairs in your house right now, sitting on the blue couch next to the weight bench. These gaming chairs are pretty sweet. You need to upgrade your TV though. Anyway, I'm looking into your bedroom. Come home soon so we can discuss where I'm sleeping tonight.
He had described all the stuff in the game room area of the house which was next to my bedroom. I could feel the colour drain from my face, and my manager asked if I was okay. I said, yes, I'm just tired, even though I'm terrified. I delete the voicemail, I know that was stupid, and I go to a friend's house to stay the night for a few days. I only go home to grab clothes during the daytime. I continue to get calls from an unknown number for a few months. Sometimes they hang up as soon as I answer, and other times they ask what I'm doing or wearing. I don't recognize their voice. I even put it on speakerphone in front of a friend asking if they knew who it was, but they didn't. I never had my friends over to my house because my mum and stepdad are terrible people, so it wasn't one of my friends. I asked my ex-boyfriend about it, thinking he was trying to, quote, nurture dependence, unquote. He said no, but I could come stay with him for a while. I declined. My best guess is it was one of my stepdad's friends thinking that it's some hilarious joke. My parents ended up getting a divorce 4 months after all of this started, so I moved out and the calls stopped. I asked my mum about it recently and she said she didn't know who it was. She got angry that I didn't tell her about it while it was happening. Creepy mystery guy, let's not meet again. This took place in 2007. I was in 4th grade and 9 years old at the time. We live in a large neighbourhood, and at that time it was surrounded by farmland. My house is a 1-story house. When you stand in the doorway of my room, you can see the front door, the kitchen on the left, and my brother's room straight ahead. Turning your head to the left, you can see the living room and my parents' room. For a while, we had been getting calls from jail. We had a home phone that had caller ID. 3 times a day for a week, our phone would ring and the caller ID would say jail. We had no relation to jail at all. No police came to the house, nothing. We never answered. My mum always said that if they don't leave a voicemail, then it isn't important. They never left one, so we didn't answer. They always seemed to call in the morning, afternoon, and evening. Well, one day we only got 1 call. We thought that was weird, but we didn't care. That night I was in bed playing quietly because my sister, who was an infant at the time, was sleeping in my room. I remember playing with my Madeline doll and I decided to go to bed. It was around 9 or 10 PM at that time. When I put my head on the pillow, the doorbell rang. Well, this was the time my dad would be getting home, so I thought it was my dad playing with me. The doorbell rang again and again and again. I got scared. I clutched my doll and I ran to my mum's room. She was awake and watching TV. I told her someone was ringing the doorbell. She paused the TV and the doorbell rang. It just kept ringing. She immediately got my brother and sister. The ringing stopped. She looked through the peephole and saw a black figure of some sort, but she couldn't make it out. She did mention that she didn't know if it was a person or something else. She was too afraid to turn the porch light on. She went back to her room and the ringing continued and then knocking. It didn't sound like someone was trying to break in. It sounded like casual ringing and knocking, but it just kept going. Then it went faster and got more intense. I got scared and started to cry. "Mummy, make it stop! Make it stop!" My mum called my dad to get home now. He was 30 minutes away and we endured intense ringing and knocking for what seemed an eternity. The longer we waited, the more vicious it sounded. Then it stopped. We sat in silence with the only light there being the TV. Then the garage opened and my mum had this sense of fear in her eyes as the garage door went up. She held onto my infant sister, tightly braced herself to protect us.
Anne?
It was my dad. "Tell me when you arrived." My dad didn't see anything. His lights were on when he pulled into our street, but he drove slowly. He saw no car driving past him or anyone. My brother and I started to head back to our rooms when the ringing started. We froze. The ringing and knocking continued viciously, and my dad ran towards the front and swung it open. No one was there. Nothing. My dad ran around the house. Nothing. The calls from jail stopped. We keep our porch light on now, and whenever the doorbell rings, I do get nervous and keep quiet. I am still afraid that one day it might happen again. So I've been hit on by male telemarketers a lot. Every single time it leaves me shaking because they're so aggressive and creepy, but this one was by far the worst. I had to call Amazon customer service my freshman year of college about something that had been charged or returned by mistake, and I was chatting with the man helping me. I figure these people have to deal with grumpy assholes all day, so it's not going to kill me to be nice and make small talk for a little bit, even though I'm horribly shy. It started with the normal questions in these chats. Where do you go to school for the student account? What are you studying? Do you like it? What's the state like, etc. This time, though, the questions started getting more personal. How old are you? Do you live alone? Do you live alone at school? Do you have a boyfriend? Keep in mind, I'm only about 17, maybe just barely 18. At this point, the transaction was over and this man was just talking to me. I wanted to hang up, but I didn't want to be rude, and I was honestly panicking a little. I don't remember what other questions he asked, but I remember they made me feel nervous, and he had started calling me honey. Eventually, I told him the conversation needed to end and that I was uncomfortable. I wished him a good day and then hung up. I figured that would be the end of it, and I went to go and hang out with my parents to calm down. About a week later, I get a call from someone who's asking for someone by a name I can't quite catch. I said, "My name is name. There's no one here by that name. You have the wrong number." The person replies that they have the right number and says that they need name. This goes on for several minutes with the person on the phone getting more aggressive before he finally says,
Oh no, honey, I know I have the right number.
When I tell you my blood went cold, I mean ice in my veins. Fight or flight activated. I might faint cold. The second the person on the phone called me honey, something clicked, and I knew for a fact it was the same fucking guy. I told him to never call me again and hung up immediately, but I was ready to cry. If this guy had the guts to call me on his own just to be a creep, I didn't know what else he would be willing to do. He had had access to my Amazon account. He could see my address, my phone, my email, everything. I continued to receive calls for about a month where the person on the other end wouldn't say anything, but you knew for certain someone was there. I could hear them breathing. For some reason, like an absolute dumbass, I didn't tell a soul until this past semester of my junior year. I've only told 2 people. I know I should have reported him the second it happened. They record calls, but I didn't know his name. I was also terrified that he would find me and retaliate. So, creepy fucker who liked to call me honey, let's not ever meet.